Right, Shalom. First, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah, Kodash, double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. So, today we're just going to go into, all right, the history of the Maccabees, all right, or the Maccabees, and mainly getting into a little bit of secular history with it, okay? So, I'm not going to start at the very beginning. I'm going to start actually, I'm going to start at Antiochus III, okay, which we're going to go into now. The Book of Maccabees, when you read about it, it's taking place, um, you could say, in between the Old and the New Testament, all right, because after the Old Testament, the major prophets, so on and so forth, all right, you have the Book of Malachi, you have all these prophets, but there was a period in time in between there, all right, when the coming of the Greek Empire, during that whole time, all right, of the Greek Empire, all right, Jake was there, okay, and of course, we were under different priests, all right, Onias and so many other different priests, so on and so forth, until the Romans, all right, basically took over, and then it switched up over there. But in the midst of that, all right, that's where you have the Hasmonean dynasty, and all of that comes from. Okay, now dealing with the Book of Maccabees to start, let's actually go into the Book of Maccabees. This is let me just pull it up. All right, so this is First Maccabees, all right, chapter 1. Now, like I said, I'm just gonna go straight to the point. Okay, First Maccabees chapter 1, and let's go to verse 10. See, because when we go into the Book of Maccabees, we're focusing on Antiochus, the fourth Epiphanes. Well, as you read in the Book of First and Second Maccabees, it goes deeper than that. And there's certain names that come up that you might not necessarily recognize, and sometimes it can get confusing because you have to recognize that Antiochus, all right, is a title. It's not a name. Okay. So when you see it says Antiochus and then it says son of Antiochus, then it says another Antiochus, and you getting confused, you're saying, well, hold up, well, how many different Antiochus are there? Who's this guy? How is he, related to this guy? You have Alexander, Demetrius, all these names that pop up in there. All right, and it can get confusing because it's actually going into history. So sometimes it's good to look up, all right, these different names and these different people, all right, in the secular history, so you can get a bit more understanding, all right, on who they are and why they play the role they play. So this is First Maccabees chapter 1 verse 10. It says, and there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus surnamed Epiphanes. So now where we're going is we've passed, all right, saying we're starting with the Greek Empire, right? The Greeks came into rulership with Alexander, right? So you had Alexander, as a quick run through, you had Alexander, okay, and then after he had done his job, he died, and his kingdom was split amongst his generals. In the end, you had four final main generals who we know today as Ptolemy, all right, Lysimachus, Cassander, and Seleucus. Now, in this, all right, in the Book of Maccabees, we're mainly focusing on the Ptolemies and the Seleucid line, but it's more so on the Seleucid line. So out of the four generals, Ptolemy had Egypt and Seleucus had Asia Minor. Okay, so focusing on that area, as a matter of fact, another thing that's good to do is to pull up. All right, so pull up the geographical locations, which can help you better understand it. So let's say Diadachi. Let's look this up. Okay, boom. Now this is it. This is in. We could look this up. Okay, here we go. So this is a good one right here. So all right, you have Antigonus, okay, which his portion was over here. You have Ptolemy, who had Egypt. All right, you had Cassander, who had Macedon, and you had Lysimachus, who had Thrace. Right now, after all is said and done, a big portion, all right, of this area went to Seleucus, okay, because Antigonus had gotten defeated, so it went to Seleucus. So when dealing with the book of Maccabees, of course, you have Israel, all right, Jerusalem, you have Israel in this area, but you have the Ptolemies who are down here, and you have the Seleucid dynasty who are up here, okay, and they're constantly battling over this portion right here, okay. When you read in the book of Daniel, the 11th chapter, when it goes into the Syrian wars, guess what? That's mainly the king of the south and the king of the north. They fighting trying to gain land around this respective area. Okay, so going back to the book of Maccabees. So, like I said, we're starting at Antiochus the third, which I have his information here. We're starting at Antiochus the third. Now, you had Seleucus the first, all right, and then you had his son Antiochus the first, Soter, which Soter means savior. Okay, then you had Antiochus the second, Theos, which means God, and then after that you had I believe it was Seleucus the second. Let me just confirm on his name. I don't want to butcher it. It might have been Callinicus or Seranus. Let's find out. Seleucus II Callinicus. All right. So it was not, just, oh, Antiochus this. It was a succession. Okay. It was a line. All right. So you had Seleucus II Callinicus, and then his son, or his successor, Seleucus III Seranus, and then after that you have Antiochus the third, the Great, and this is the man that's who we're going to start at today. Okay, so now going back to the book of First Maccabees, chapter 10, or chapter 1, verse 10, it says, "And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus surnamed Epiphanes." Now that they came out of is specifying the Seleucid line. Because if you trace Antiochus Epiphanes' line back, you're going to end up back at Seleucus the first. Okay, so it's from the line of the Seleucids that Antiochus Epiphanes came from. And Antiochus Epiphanes was actually the son of Antiochus the third, the Great. And we're going to read it. So it says, "And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king." So now, if you don't know the distinction between the two, you're gonna say, "Wait, so Antiochus was a son of Antiochus?" And you got to understand that. Look, it's a title. So this Antiochus the king is this man right here, okay, which we're gonna read about. It says, "Who had been in hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks." Now, keep in mind, it said who had been in hostage at Rome, and that's talking about Antiochus Epiphanes. And we're gonna later on we're gonna come back to that because that is an important that also plays an important role. So now let's read a little bit about Antiochus the Third the Great. Now it says Antiochus the Third the Great was a Macedonian Hellenistic king and the sixth ruler of the Seleucid Empire. He ruled over the region of Syria and large parts of the rest of Western Asia towards the end of the 3rd century BC, rising to the throne at the age of 18 in 222 BC. His early campaigns against the Ptolemaic kingdom were unsuccessful, but in the following years, Antiochus gained several military victories and substantially expanded the empire's territory. Now, understand that as they were going back and forth, the Ptolemies and the Seleucids, guess what? We were the ones who were subject. Okay, if the let's say one of the Antiochus or one of the those from the line of Seleucus was in rulership, guess what? We would be subject under them. And then if the Ptolemies came and took them over, we would be subject under them. So we kept constantly having to go, basically deal with it. So it says his traditional designation, the Great, reflects an epithet he assumed. He also assumed the title Basileus Megas, which is Greek for great king, and the traditional title of the Persian kings. A military active ruler, Antiochus restored much of the territory of the Seleucid Empire before suffering a serious setback towards the end of his reign in his war against Rome. Now, Rome did not just pop up out of nowhere. Okay, while the Greeks were going on and doing this, guess what? Rome was also there. All right, Rome was also going on and doing things, growing and growing and growing. So when we hear about Rome and when we read in the New Testament and they're this big empire, that didn't just happen overnight. They didn't just pop up out of nowhere and Rome became a big old empire and swallowed everybody up. No, they were there. Okay, but the focus didn't shift to them just yet. Okay, we were still dealing with the Greeks. All right. So being that the Romans were still there and they were still growing in power, they did play certain roles in here, because we'll read about it in the book of Maccabees how Judas, all right, and others of the brothers of Judas had made an alliance with the Romans. Okay, so it says here, Antiochus restored much of the territory of the Seleucid Empire before suffering a serious setback toward the end of his reign in his war against Rome. Declaring himself the champion of Greek freedom against Roman domination, Antiochus III waged a 4-year war against the Roman Republic, and that was a bad move. Beginning in mainland Greece in the autumn of 192 BC, before being decisively defeated at the Battle of Magnesia, he died 3 years later on the campaign in the east. Now, when Antiochus III got defeated at the Battle of Magnesia, it wasn't just, oh, I got defeated, let's call it a day and let's keep it pushing. No, he got defeated, and in turn, this is what happened. Let's click on it. Let's click on it. The Battle of Magnesia, Antiochus lost. Now, when he lost, they signed a treaty. Okay, and that treaty, I don't know if it's in here. If it is, I'll see if I can find it. If not, I'll just look it up. All right, let's go to aftermath. There it is. Treaty of Apamea. Okay, and that's what it was called, the Treaty of Apamea. Let's read it. The Treaty of Apamea was a peace treaty on 188 BC between the Roman Republic and Antiochus III, ruler of the Seleucid Empire. It took place after the Romans' victory in the Battle of Thermopylae in 191 BC, in the Battle of Magnesia in 190 BC, and after Roman and Rhodian naval victories over the Seleucid navy. So you had Antiochus, who went to war with Rome. Now, when you read about it, Antiochus, it doesn't really say that this Antiochus specifically put hell on Israelites as much as Antiochus Epiphanes. He was a real straight up demon. All right, the Lord put the spirit on him to really put hell, all right, on us. Okay, so the importance of this treaty, which we're going to read, all right, it says here, the treaty, according to Appian, obliged Antiochus III to abandon Europe altogether and all of Asia west of the Taurus Mountains. Okay, now let's say we look up the Taurus Mountain. You see, this is Tarsus. The Taurus Mountain was basically a division, all right, or in the middle of Turkey, modern day Turkey. Okay, so he had to basically abandon, as it says, Asia on the west of the Taurus Mountain. Actually, there's a diagram here you can see. So anything west of this area, Antiochus had to give that up. Okay. Now it says also he had to surrender all war elephants in his possession and was limited to 12 warships for the purpose of keeping his subjects under control. But he was allowed to build more if he was attacked. Antiochus was barred from recruiting mercenaries from Roman territory and entertaining fugitives from the same. Antiochus had to give 20 hostages, whom the Roman consul would select. Now there goes that word hostages again. It says the hostages should be changed every 3rd year, except the son of Antiochus. So one of the hostages that Antiochus had to give up to Rome was his son, okay, or one of his sons. And that's why when we read in verse 10, it mentioned that Antiochus Epiphanes had been in hostage at Rome. That goes back to the Treaty of Apamea, which his father, all right, Antiochus Epiphanes, his father, which we're reading about now, had signed after he lost to the Romans. Okay. So it says in future, okay, in the future he would maintain no elephants and pay for the cost of the present war. So he had to pay war indemnities. He had to cut down his arsenal. He had to sacrifice territories, and he had to give 20 hostages, of which one had to be his son. All right. It said, and pay for the cost of the present war, incurred on his account 500 Eubonic talents down and 2,500 more when the Roman Senate ratified the treaty. And then it goes on, so on and so forth. But we got the point that we're looking for. So the main thing I wanted to get concerning Antiochus III is the Treaty of Apamea, which he signed. Now, Antiochus, let's go back. Antiochus III the Great had, as we can read here, his the main sons that he had were Antiochus the fourth Epiphanes and Seleucus the fourth Philopator. Okay, now Seleucus the fourth, all right, he is we know him in relation to Heliodorus. All right, so let's get that. That's Second Maccabees, the third chapter. All right, which we're familiar with the story where you had Heliodorus. He went there to try and get the the treasury, all right, the gold and stuff from the temple, and the Lord sent angels down to beat him up, and he almost died. But because Onias prayed for him, the Lord spared his life, and he went back to Seleucus. Now Heliodorus was not the king. All right, he was sent by the king. So who was that king? Let's read it. This is Second Maccabees chapter 3. Now this is taking place after Antiochus III is dead. Okay, and he had Antiochus the fourth Epiphanes, he had Seleucus the fourth Philopator, and I believe he had one more. Okay, he had another son called Antiochus. All right, it doesn't add anything else; it just says Antiochus. So, Second Maccabees chapter 3 verse 1. Now, when the holy city was inhabited with all peace, and the laws were kept very well, because of the goodliness of Onias the high priest, and his hatred for wickedness, it came to pass that even the kings themselves did honor the place and magnify the temple with their best gifts. So at this time, the Lord hadn't brought that major hell upon Jake, all right, like he did during the time of Antiochus Epiphanes. So it says, in so much that Seleucus, see? So now this goes to show you, hold up, if the Bible is a fable, right, it's made up, why do they have real names in here? Because this guy Seleucus is a real person. And as a matter of fact, we're going to read about him. Okay? And the Seleucus that is talking about here, though all it says is Seleucus of Asia, the Seleucus at this time is Seleucus the fourth Philopator. And the word Philopator means lover of father. Pater means father and philo means love. All right? So, like for example, philosophy, all right, is philo, which is love, and Sophie or Sophia, which is wisdom. So lover of wisdom. Okay. Same thing with philometer or philomater, which is lover of mother. All right. So it says here, verse 3, in so much that Seleucus of Asia, of his own revenues, bear all the costs belonging to the services of the sacrifices. Now, once again, this is Seleucus the fourth Philopator. But one Simon of the tribe of Benjamin, who was made governor of the temple, fell out with the high priest about disorder in the city. So they had a disagreement. And when he could not overcome Onias, he got him to Apollonius, the son of Thracius, who was then governor of Coal Syria and Phoenice, which is Phoenicia. Okay. And told him that the treasury in Jerusalem was full of infinite sums of money, so that the multitude of their riches, which did not pertain to the account of the sacrifices, was innumerable. So he's basically saying there's excess amount of gold and riches that is not, because it says that Seleucus bear the revenue or the cost, all right, the revenue of all the costs belonging to the services of the sacrifices. So here, what's his name? Simon is telling them, yo, the temple is full of so much riches that aren't even for the sacrifices; they're just there. It says was innumerable, and that it was possible to bring all into the king's hand. Okay, so he's basically saying we could give this all to you because he's salty that he had a falling away with Onias and he couldn't prevail. All right, and that shows you Jake's mindset, man. It says, now when Apollonius came to the king and had showed him of the money whereof he was told, the king chose out Heliodorus, his treasurer, and sent him with a commandment to bring him the foresaid money. Now, as we said, Heliodorus, which is the king's treasurer, okay, was sent to collect the money. But when he got there, he had a different, there was sign waiting for him. All right. Now we're just gonna jump to the point. Let's see. Okay, let's go down to there it is, verse 25. It says, for there appeared unto them a horse with a terrible rider upon him, and that was an angel, and adorned with a very fair covering, and he ran fiercely and smote at Heliodorus with his forefeet. And it seemed that he that sat upon the horse had complete harness of gold. Moreover, two other young men appeared before him. So you had the dude on the horse, all right, or the angel on the horse, and he had two other angels that pulled up. Notable in strength, so that means that they were brolic, they were strong, and you could see the cuts and the striations and all of that. Okay, because if somebody's notable in strength, that means that you can tell just by looking at them that damn, this guy is strong. All right, so you had two of these angels, notable in strength, excellent in beauty, and comely in apparel, who stood by him on either side. So they were right here and right here, and scourged him continually. He got jumped and gave him many sore stripes. So they beat him. They beat him real good. It says, and Heliodorus fell suddenly onto the ground and was compassed with great darkness. But they that were with him took him up and put him into a litter. And then, as it goes on, it tells you that Onias prayed for him and his life was spared. Now let's read what happened. It says, so Heliodorus, after he had offered sacrifice unto the Lord, so this is after he got revived, okay, and made great vows unto him that had saved his life, and saluted Onias, returned with his host to the king. Then testified he to all men the works of the great power which he had seen with his eyes. And when the king, it says, and when the king Heliodorus, who might be fit a man to be sent yet once again, so I'm guessing it should say asked. All right, when the king asked Heliodorus, who might be a fit man to be sent yet once again to Jerusalem, he said, if thou hast any enemy or traitor, send him thither, and thou shalt receive him well scourged, if he escape with his life. So if you got anybody you don't like, that's who you should send over there. And if you get him back, if he escape, all right, he's gonna be well scourged, man. He's gonna get his ass beat right. It says, for in that place, no doubt there is an especial power to the Most High. Now, when Heliodorus, all right, let's keep reading. It says, for he that dwelleth in heaven hath his eye on that place, and defendeth it, and he beateth and destroyeth them that come to hurt it. And the things concerning Heliodorus and the keeping of the treasury fell out on this sort. Now, when Heliodorus came back, he just got his ass divinely beat. Okay, so he ended up, as we're gonna read, assassinating, okay, Seleucus. Okay, and that's how Seleucus died. Now it doesn't mention it in here, okay, which is why we got to go into the secular history. All right. Let's see. Okay, so let's go in here. This is Seleucus the fourth Philopator. This is the king that sent Heliodorus to Jerusalem. Now it says, under the ruler of the Hellenistic Seleucid Empire, reigned from 187 BC to 175 BC over a realm consisting of Syria, now including Cilicia and Judea, Mesopotamia, Babylonia, and nearer Iran. Now it says he was the second son and successor of Antiochus III the Great and Laodice III. Now, usually the crown goes to the firstborn, but it says that Seleucus was the second son of Antiochus, but yet he was king. Remember, when you go back to the Treaty of Apamea, okay, one of Antiochus III the Great, one of his sons had to be given hostage at Rome. And guess who that was? Antiochus IV. All right. Epiphanes, which his original name was Mithridates. Okay. He was the hostage at Rome. So who was left? His brother, Seleucus IV Philopator, and he in turn became the king. So it says Seleucus IV wed his sister Laodice IV, by whom he had 3 children, 2 sons, Antiochus, Demetrius the first Soter, and a daughter Laodice the fifth. Seleucus was made co-ruler with his father and ascended as sole Basileus, which is king, upon Antiochus' death in 187 BC. He was compelled by financial necessities, created in part by the heavy war indemnity exacted by Rome in the Treaty of Apamea, which concluded their war with the Seleucids in 188 BC. It says, to pursue an ambitious policy, in an effort to collect money to pay the Romans, he sent his minister Heliodorus to Jerusalem to seize the Jewish temple treasury. So why was he, when you read in the book of Maccabees, after Simon had went and snitched or told him that there's excess amount of riches in the temple, why was Seleucus so pressed that he sent Heliodorus to go collect it, because he still had to pay for the war indemnities that his father had acquired. All right. Now it says taxes and assassination. The Bible tells of a prophecy given by a messenger angel in Daniel 11 and 20. The text states that Seleucus IV, or Seleucus, will be remembered as the king who sent a tax collector to maintain the royal splendor. Now, when you read it, it says, it mentions that after Antiochus' death, there shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes. All right. It says the deuterocanonical or deuterocanonical lends more to this in 2 Maccabees 3 and 2-3, which we read. It says it came to pass that even the kings themselves and the princes esteemed the place, the temple in Jerusalem, worthy of the highest honor, and glorified the temple with very great gifts, so that Seleucus, king of Asia, allowed out of his revenues all the charges belonging to the ministry of the sacrifices. Now, on his return from Jerusalem, Heliodorus assassinated Seleucus and installed Seleucus' youngest son, Antiochus, as king. The true heir, Demetrius, son of Seleucus, was now being retained in Rome as an hostage, and the kingdom was seized by the younger brother of Seleucus, Antiochus IV Epiphanes. Antiochus managed to oust Heliodorus and co-ruled with the young Antiochus until 170 BC, when he had him murdered. All right. So basically, after you had Seleucus, after he sent Heliodorus, Heliodorus got his ass divinely beat, and Heliodorus came back. Upon his return, as we just read, he assassinated Seleucus. Okay. Now, Seleucus, as we read, had sons. We literally just read he had two sons. Demetrius the first Soter, which Soter means savior. Okay. And he had Antiochus, which was his young son. Okay. Now, going back to the treaty that they had with Rome, the current king had to switch out the hostages. So he had to provide one of his sons as a hostage to Rome. Okay. So his son, his older son, Demetrius the first Soter, is who Seleucus sent to Rome. Now, Seleucus' father, all right, let's take it back now. When the treaty was first signed, when the Treaty of Apamea was first signed by Antiochus III and the Romans, Antiochus had to give up one of his sons. At the time, you had Seleucus IV, Philopator, and you had Antiochus Epiphanes. So Antiochus III ended up giving Antiochus Epiphanes as a hostage to Rome. Now, after Antiochus III died, the new king was Seleucus IV. So now Seleucus IV had to give a hostage to Rome. And that's what ended up happening. He gave his son Demetrius the first Soter as a hostage to Rome. And in turn, Antiochus, who was the previous hostage, got released. Okay. Now, when Antiochus got released and he came, guess what? He found out that his brother was dead, and that the person who killed him, Seleucus, was still there. The person who killed him, which was Heliodorus, was there. So he ended up basically offing Heliodorus, all right, getting his ass out of there. And then he came in there. Now, when you read in the book of Daniel, it tells you that Antiochus Epiphanes, he was a demon. He came in there sly. He came in there. He said, hold up, what? He got Heliodorus out of there. And then what did he do? He basically acted as though, oh, I'm going to, co-rule with my nephew. Because remember, Heliodorus set up the son of Seleucus as the king. And he was young. All right. So Antiochus came in there and said, oh, he's young. I'm going to tutor him. I'll train him. I'll basically be his guardian and be like a king regent until he becomes of age, which was all a lie. It was just a plot so that Antiochus Epiphanes can get the throne. All right. But that's not how it's supposed to go, because the throne, as you can see, is passed down from the father to son. Antiochus didn't have a true claim to the throne unless he assassinated the son of Seleucus, which is, as we read, is what he did. Okay. Now, so we just read about Seleucus Philopator, right? Now, this Antiochus was his son, all right, the young one who got assassinated by Epiphanes. So it says all it gives us here is that Antiochus's year of birth is not specified by ancient historians, but his portrait known from his coins indicated that he was approximately 5 years old when he assumed the throne in 175 BC. So now you see why Heliodorus put him there, because if Heliodorus put this young Antiochus there, right? Who else is going to be able to rule? Heliodorus could then say, "Oh well, since he's so young, I'm gonna basically rule for him until he comes of age." But when Epiphanes came, he said, "No, no, no, you ain't doing that. Get the hell out of here," you know. And then in turn, Epiphanes turned and did the same thing and said, "Oh, look at him. He's young. He's my nephew. We're related by blood. So if anything, I'm gonna help him out." Man, that was all BS. He really wanted the throne to himself. Okay, so let's read it. It says, when he assumed the throne in 175 BC, he was the younger son of King Seleucus IV and his wife Laodice IV. The empire was obligated by the 188 BC Treaty of Apamea, signed by King Antiochus III, lost a war against the Romans, to send a hostage at Rome, or send a hostage to Rome. At first, Antiochus's uncle, right now, like I said, Antiochus is a title, so don't get it mixed up. Okay, Antiochus, this Antiochus here is the young boy. All right, his uncle Antiochus IV Epiphanes was sent as a hostage at Rome, which I already explained that. It says after Antiochus III's death in 187 BC, Seleucus IV replaced his brother Antiochus Epiphanes with his eldest son and heir Demetrius. He swapped out hostages. Since Rome considered it important that a son of the reigning king be a hostage, the exchange took place before 178 BC. The death of Seleucus IV in 175 BC and the presence of Demetrius I in Rome led to the young Antiochus' proclamation as king, because he was the only one left. All right, his father was dead, and his older brother, who was really supposed to be the king, is now a hostage. So now he's a 5-year-old, but he has to be the king. It says, but the minister Heliodorus, who probably killed Seleucus IV, held the real power, like I mentioned, because now he's the minister, right? Seleucus is dead. You have a 5-year-old who's the king, but obviously a 5-year-old is not going to rule. And in a case like that, you have a king regent. Now, there's a precept on it, actually. Let's get that. Hopefully this thing loads. Let's see. Should pop up here. Galatians chapter 4. Right. This is Galatians chapter 4, verse 1. It says, now I say that the heir, as long as he is a child, differeth nothing from a servant, though he be Lord of all. Because in name, he would be the king, or he would be the next up to be king, but he's a child, right? So it says, but is under tutors and governors until the time appointed of the father. Okay, so what was supposed to happen was, being that Seleucus's older son was a hostage and his younger son was going to become the king, Seleucus was supposed to basically tutor and train his son until his son became of age, and then he would have him come to rulership. But being that he was assassinated, there was no choice left but to put the 5-year-old in power. All right. And as we're reading here, it says Heliodorus held the real power. Now it says Antiochus IV, which is Epiphanes. I'm just going to refer to him as Epiphanes because it's more recognizable. So it says Epiphanes soon arrived in Syria and proclaimed himself a co-ruler in a succession that was illegal. Why? Because Epiphanes had no claim to the throne. The king was his brother, and his brother had sons. So the throne was supposed to go through his brother. You can't come out of here and say, oh, I'm going to be a co-ruler with my nephew. That's not how it works. But who was going to stop him? So it says Antiochus the fourth, or Epiphanes, disposed of Heliodorus and kept his nephew in the shadow. The young Antiochus died in 170 BC, possibly on the orders of Epiphanes. All right, and that's how Antiochus Epiphanes came into power. So when we go back to First Maccabees, the first chapter. All right, now mind you, this is all before the Maccabean revolt. Okay, at this point in time, Judas Maccabees, Mattathias, they have not revolted yet. Okay, so when we go back to First Maccabees 1 and 10, and it says, and there came out of them a wicked root Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes. This is how he got into power. Okay, Antiochus wasn't the rightful king, but through deceits and murder and assassinations, he managed to get his way into power. Okay, and this was Antiochus Epiphanes. Let's click on him here. Now it says Antiochus the fourth Epiphanes, which his name was actually Theos Epiphanes, which means God manifest. All right, or Adiohos Epiphanes. All right, if I'm saying that right. It says was a Hellenistic king of the Seleucid Empire from 175 BC until his death in 164 BC. He was a son of King Antiochus III the Great. His original name was Mithridates. All right, alternative form of Mithridates. He assumed the name Antiochus after he ascended to the throne. So Antiochus was basically like a throne name. Same thing with Seleucus. All right, you have Seleucus the first, Seleucus the second, Seleucus the third. Same way you have Antiochus the first, Antiochus the second, Antiochus the third. Same way you have Ptolemy the first. So these are all just titles. Darius, okay, Xerxes. These are titles. All right. So it says he assumed the name Antiochus after he ascended the throne. Notable events during the reign of Antiochus IV included his near conquest of Egypt, his persecution of the Jews of Judea and Samaria, and the rebellion of the Jewish Maccabees. So Judas Maccabees and the Maccabean revolt didn't happen until after this demon came into power. Because why did they revolt? Because Antiochus was putting hell on us. Okay. So it says Antiochus was the first Seleucid king to use divine epithets on coins, perhaps inspired by the Bactrian Hellenistic kings who had earlier done so, or else building on the ruler cults that his father Antiochus III the Great had codified within the Seleucid Empire. It says these epithets included manifest God, which is where you get Theos Epiphanes, all right, and after his defeat of Egypt, bringer of victory. However, Antiochus also tried to interact with common people by appearing in the public bathhouses and applying for municipal offices. And his often eccentric behavior and capricious actions led some of his contemporaries to call him Epimanes, which means the mad one, which was a wordplay on the title Epiphanes. Cool. So this is the demon who, when we're reading about in First Maccabees, the first chapter, all right, was putting hell on Jake. Okay. Let's see. It says, all right, let's read this right here. This is First Maccabees chapter 1, verse 16. Now, when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, after he came to rule, all right, and he had assassinated his nephew. It says he thought to reign over Egypt that he might have the dominion of two realms. Because remember, I showed you the diagram. He had Asia Minor, all right, and parts of Coal Syria, but he wanted to take the whole Near East. He wanted to take Egypt also, all right. Wherefore he entered into Egypt with a great multitude, with chariots and elephants and horsemen, and a great navy, and made war against Ptolemy, king of Egypt. But Ptolemy was afraid of him and fled, and many were wounded to death. Thus they got the strong cities in the land of Egypt, and he took the spoils thereof. Now, one key thing that also happened to Antiochus that really pissed him off, which is why he also came back and destroyed and put hell on us, was that when he went to take over Egypt, all right, he had already taken over certain areas, and Egypt had filed a claim to Rome, saying that, hey, Antiochus is coming in here and he's causing trouble. Rome was allied with Egypt. Why? Because that's where they would get their grain from. So they would get their a supply of grain because the population of Rome was growing, and they needed that constant supply. So they basically say, "Yo, my mans, you can't come into Egypt and mess with them because you're gonna affect our grain, and we can't do it. We're not having that. We're not about to play that right now." Okay. So when Antiochus went to take over, the Romans sent. Let me actually pull it up. Let's see. War against Egypt and relations with Rome. Let's get to the point. Okay. All right. It says in 168 BC, Antiochus led a second attack on Egypt and also sent a fleet to capture Cyprus. Before he reached Alexandria, his path was blocked by a single elderly Roman ambassador named Gaius Popilius Lianus, and this is also written of in the book of Daniel. All right, the 11th chapter. It says, who delivered a message from the Roman Senate directing Antiochus to withdraw his armies from Egypt and Cyprus, or consider himself in a state of war with the Roman Republic. So what happened was you had this general which was sent, or this Roman ambassador which was sent by Rome, and now Antiochus had his whole army. He set everything is straight, and you had this one general comes and he says, "Yo," Antiochus pulls up. Now Antiochus, remember, Antiochus had already been in hostage at Rome, and Antiochus and this man, Gaius Popilius Lianus, were friends because while Antiochus was a hostage at Rome, they knew each other. Okay, so when Gaius pulled up, Antiochus is thinking, "Oh, yo, let me shake your hand, let me, give you what's up, what's going on." He wasn't hearing none of that. He said, "I'm here on business duty." All right. He says, "Look, you are you about to go up into Egypt because we not with that." And he ended up drawing. He took. Read it actually. Let me just read it. Let me read it. It says, okay. He said, directing Antiochus to withdraw his armies from Egypt and Cyprus, or consider himself in a state of war with the Roman Republic. Now, this is before Rome had become an empire. This is before Julius Caesar. This is before Augustus and all of them. It says Antiochus said he would discuss it with his council, whereupon the Roman envoy. So now Antiochus, now all right, let me talk it over and let's see. No. The Romans weren't there to talk discussion. He's there to tell you what the Senate had already said. So this is what he did. It says he would discuss it with his council, whereupon the Roman envoy drew a line in the sand around Antiochus and said, "Before you leave this circle, give me a reply that I can take back to the Roman Senate." This implied Rome would declare war if the king stepped out of the circle without committing to leave Egypt immediately. Weighing his options, Antiochus decided to withdraw. Only then did Popilius agree to shake hands with him. All right. So Popilius came there and said, "Look, I'm going to draw a circle around you because you're trying to play games. Now you're forced to give me an answer. If you step out the circle without giving me an answer, that's a declaration of war, and Rome is about to tear your ass up. Okay? So give me an answer." Antiochus, of course, Antiochus had an army, but Antiochus didn't have a big enough army to go against Rome. All right? Rome had already defeated the Carthaginians and all of them. So there ain't no way Antiochus was about to go against Rome. So, he's like, all right, whatever. He withdraws. He's embarrassed. He has his whole army with him. So in turn, what does he do? He goes back on his way back up, all right, because he had to go through Israel. Guess who he meets on the way? Jake. And guess what? He takes his anger out on us. All right. Now, let's see what else we got here. So now he does that, and as we're reading back here in First Maccabees, the first chapter, and let me see, here we go, verse 20. It says, "And after that Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he returned in the 143rd year, and went up against Israel in Jerusalem with a great multitude, and entered proudly into the sanctuary, and took away the golden altar, and the candlestick of light, and all the vessels thereof, and the table of the showbread, and the pouring vessels, and the vials, and the censers of gold, and the veil, and the crown, and the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all which he polluted, or he pulled off." All right, and it goes on to say, jump down to verse 24. "And when he had taken all away, he went into his own land, having made a great massacre and spoken very proudly." So this is the kind of hell he was putting on our people. All right, the scriptures say where he also made a decree, okay, that all should be one people, that everybody should leave their God and worship his God, sacrifice pork on the altar, bring harlots into the temple, start a gymnasium, all these wicked heathenistic things. And this is what led to the Maccabean revolt. Okay. Now let's see. I think that's in here it is. First Maccabees, the second chapter. So First Maccabees chapter 2 and First Maccabees chapter 1, starting with Antiochus. This is after the history that we just went through with Antiochus the third, Seleucus the fourth, so on and so forth. Now, the book of Second Maccabees is not necessarily a continuation of First Maccabees. It just goes more in depth with certain parts and certain portions of it. Okay, so This is First Maccabees chapter 2, verse 1. It says, "In those days arose Mattathias, the son of John, the son of Simon or Simeon, a priest of the sons of Jorib from Jerusalem, and dwelt in Modin. And he had 5 sons: Johanan called Cadiz, Simon called Thassi, Judas, who was called Maccabeus, Eleazar called Avaran, and Jonathan, whose surname was Aphis. And when he saw the blasphemies that were committed in Judah and Jerusalem, he said, Woe is me! Wherefore was I born to see this misery of my people and of the holy city, and to dwell there when it was delivered into the hand of the enemy, and the sanctuary into the hand of strangers? Now, at this time, the king at the time is Antiochus Epiphanes. Okay, it says his temple or her temple is become as a man without glory. Her glorious vessels are carried away into captivity. Her infants are slain in the streets. Her young men with the sword of the enemy. All right, and getting to the point. Okay, it says here. All right, verse 14. Then Mattathias and his sons rent their clothes and put on sackcloth and mourn very sore. In the meanwhile, the king's officers, such as compelled the people to revolt, came into the city of Modin to make them sacrifice. So the king, Shalom, let me see, Tyree's way. Shalom, brother, my history is a little iffy when it comes to the time of Rome and the kings and the Maccabees. But how did Rome end up falling, seeing how powerful they were? All right, I'll get into that after I make this point. But basically, so Antiochus has set up garrisons. Okay, that's what they do. You take over an area, you set up garrisons, you set up troops that stay in there to make sure that whatever you have said, the people there are doing it. Okay, so it says here, then Mattathias, we read that part already. He had compelled them. So basically, this officer that the king sent was coming there to make sure that everybody's doing what Antiochus says. Everybody's sacrificing the way he wants them to sacrifice. Verse 16. And when many of Israel came unto them, Mattathias also and his sons came together. Then answered the king's officers and said to Mattathias on this wise. Now remember, Mattathias was a priest. Okay. So it says, Thou art a ruler and an honorable and great man in the city, and strengthened with sons and brethren. Now therefore come thou first, and fulfill the king's commandment, like as all the heathen have done, yea, and the men of Judah also, and such as remain at Jerusalem. So shalt thou and thy house be in number with the king's friends, and thou and thy children shall be honored with silver and gold and many rewards. Right? Then Mattathias answered and spake with a loud voice, Though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him, and fall away every one from their religion of their fathers, and give consent to his commandments, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. God forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances. So he basically told him, hell to the no. You crazy? All right. Verse 22. We will not hearken to the king's words, to go from our religion either on the right hand or on the left. Now, when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar. So Jake's dumbass. All right, here it is. Mattathias is out here letting you know that we're not about to, basically forsake our forefathers. All right, and forsake the laws and come and worship or commit this abomination. And you got this coon ass, idiot ass Jake gonna pull up. Oh shit! If he ain't gonna do it, I'll do it. You know, thinking on he's gonna get a reward or earn some brownie points or something. All right. It says, now when he had left off speaking the words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar, which was at Modin, according to the king's commandment. Which thing, when Mattathias saw, he was inflamed with zeal. So he was heated, man. Okay. And his reins trembled, neither could he forbear to show his anger according to judgment. Wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar. So the Lord put a heavy spirit upon Mattathias, all right, to just go berserk on this guy. It says, and the king's commissioner who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at the time, and the altar he pulled down. So he killed that Jake, he killed the king's commissioner, and he pulled on the altar. All right. It says, thus he dealt zealously for the law of the power or of the Most High, like as Phineas did unto Zambri, the son of Salom. All right. And then it goes in. All right. This is basically where the revolt began. Okay, now let's read. Let's read what happened. It says, and Mattathias cried throughout the city with a loud voice, saying, "Whosoever is zealous for the Lord and maintaineth the covenant, let him follow me." And he and his sons fled into the mountains and left all that ever had or that ever they had in the city. And this is where the revolt began. It began with Mattathias. The Lord put the spirit on him and his sons after him. Okay, because after Mattathias died, you had here it is in Judas Maccabees, who basically became the leader, and then you had the rest of the brothers, all right, that all played their respective roles, and the spirit jumped on them and said, look, if we don't start fighting back, we're literally going to be wiped out. Like, are we either going to become all heathens, okay, or those of us who stand for our laws and our power are just going to be killed? So we have to do something. So the spirit jumped on them and they started fighting back. So this whole time, right, since the revolt began under the rulership of Antiochus Epiphanes, all right, the temple was rededicated where you have Hanukkah, all right, the temple was rededicated, but the wars kept going on because Jake were fighting wars on all sides. You had even these heathens that were what? That were in support of the king. So Judas and his brothers were fighting constantly different battles, okay, because the king will constantly send different people. Oh shit, we lost. All right, send this governor to send this people, and they will fight different battles at different areas, so on and so forth. Even until after Antiochus died, Judas and his brothers were still fighting the different kings that rose up in his stead. Okay, so now jumping back into the secular history, we dealt with Antiochus III the Great. We dealt with his son Seleucus IV Philopator, all right, who was the one that sent Heliodorus to the temple, all right. We dealt with Antiochus' other son, which was Epiphanes that we're reading about right now, okay, and we dealt with the whole situation as to how Antiochus Epiphanes came into power. But of course, Epiphanes was not immortal, and when you read in this, you can look it up in the book of Maccabees. It goes into how he died, how the Most High basically plagued him, and his body was decomposing from the inside out while he was still alive, and he died a horrible, grievous death. But that wasn't the end of it. Okay. So now let's see who came after him. It says the successor, or the one who came after Epiphanes, was Antiochus V Eupator. All right. Now it says Antiochus V Eupator was a ruler of the Greek Seleucid Empire who reigned from 163 to 161 BC. He was appointed as king by the Romans with his protector Lysias as regent. And this is First Maccabees 6 and 16. So let's go to First Maccabees chapter 6. All right, verse 16. So hold up. We're reading about this guy. Clearly he existed because we're reading about him. There's a coin about him. He's written up in the scriptures. So you're going to turn around and tell me the scriptures are not real when it talks about it. But when you read about it here, even though it makes reference back to the scripture, oh, it's written by man. It's not real. Come on, man. Give it a rest. All right, so First Maccabees 6, and what was the verse? 6 and 16. Okay, well let's see. Let's go down. All right, First Maccabees 6, and let's read. All right, let's read verse 12. It says, "But now I remember the evils that I did at Jerusalem," and this is Epiphany speaking, or he's basically about to die. It says that I did at Jerusalem, and that I took all the vessels of gold and silver that were therein, and sent to destroy the inhabitants of Judea without a cause. I perceive therefore that for this cause these troubles are come upon me, and behold, I perish through great grief in a strange land. Then called he for Philip, one of his friends, who he made ruler over all his realm, and gave him the crown and his robe and his signet, to the end he should bring up his son Antiochus and nourish him up for the kingdom. So King Antiochus died there in the 149th year, and this was the death of Epiphanes. Now, when Lysias knew the king was dead, see, Lysias was basically the one, because let's bring it up. He was basically supposed to take care of Antiochus' son. All right, let's look it up. Lysias. Okay. This is First Maccabees chapter 3, verse 32. Let's go down. Okay, so let's start at verse 31. It says, "Wherefore, being greatly perplexed in his mind," now that he is talking about Epiphanes, "he determined to go into Persia, there to take the tributes of the countries and to gather much money. So he left Lysias, a nobleman and one of the blood royal, to oversee the affairs of the kingdom from the river Euphrates unto the borders of Egypt, and to bring up his son Antiochus until he came again." Now I remember when I first came into the truth and I read this, I was confused because I was like, hold up, Antiochus left Lysias to take care of Antiochus? It was confusing because I thought Antiochus was the name. So everywhere where I saw Antiochus, I figured, well, it's just one person. That's what we're talking about. No, it's different. Once again, Antiochus is a title. Okay, so Antiochus the fourth Epiphanes, upon his leaving, left Lysias to take care of his son Antiochus the fifth Eupator, which we're reading about right here. As it says, he was appointed as king by the Romans, with his protector Lysias as regent. Okay, and it says, First Maccabees chapter 3, it says, verse 33, "And to bring up his son Antiochus until he came again." So when Antiochus Epiphanes left, he left Lysias in charge of his younger son to bring him up, because Antiochus Epiphanes, he didn't think he was going to die, all right, upon his journey. Okay, so it says, verse 34, "Moreover, he delivered unto him half half of his forces and the elephants, and gave him charge of all things that he should have done, as also concerning them that dwell in Judah and Jerusalem." So he gave him orders, all right, to basically go out there and let's read. "To wit, that he should send an army against them to destroy and root out the strength of Israel and the remnant of Jerusalem, and to take away their memorial from that place." So these were the orders that Antiochus had given to Lysias when he left to go raid and get some money. But he ended up dying over there. So when we're reading of here in First Maccabees 6 and 16, remember, before he died, so when he left, he didn't think he was going to die. That's why he left Lysias in charge. But upon realizing he was going to die, he appointed Philip. He said, yo, you take over and you bring up my son. All right. So verse 17, First Maccabees 6 and 17 says, "Now when Lysias knew that the king was dead, he set up Antiochus his son, whom he had brought up being young, to reign in his stead, and his name was called Eupator." So the scriptures call him by name. All right, this is a real person, Antiochus the fifth Eupator, which we're reading about, boom, right here. All right. It says, Eupator, "About this time, they that were in the tower shut up the Israelites round about the sanctuary, and sought always their hurt and the strengthening of the heathen." Okay, so now let's read about Eupator and let's see, who was he, what did he do? It says, Antiochus the fifth was only 9 years old when he succeeded to the kingship. That's why he had Lysias there, because like we read in Galatians 4, that they're under tutors until they become of age where they can rule for themselves. All right. So it says, following the death in Persia of his father Antiochus the fourth Epiphanes and his mother Laodice the fourth, the general Lysias, who had been left in charge of Syria by Epiphanes, served as regent for the child, although he was challenged by other generals. The Roman Senate still kept Demetrius. So now we're going all the way back. Remember how Antiochus III the Great had to give up a hostage, and he gave up Epiphanes as the hostage to Rome. Okay, cool. Now when Antiochus the Third the Great was dead, and his son who was king, Seleucus the Fourth, came into power, they had to switch hostages now. And remember, the hostage that Seleucus gave was who? Demetrius. So this is who we're reading about right here, and that was his son. So it says the Roman Senate still kept Demetrius, son of Seleucus the Fourth, as I just said, and the rightful heir to the throne, as hostage, refusing to release him because they considered it better to have Syria nominally ruled by a boy and his regent than the 22-year-old Demetrius. So they said, look, we'd rather have the younger, Antiochus ruled than to have Demetrius go over there. Okay, so they kept him there. It says, at the outset of the reign of Antiochus V, there was an attempt by the Syrians to quell the Maccabean revolt in Judea, but this ended in a weak compromise. After a military victory at the Battle of Beth Zechariah and the killing of Eleazar Avaran, a brother of Judas Maccabeus, Lysias was informed that Philip, a confidant of Antiochus IV Epiphanes, who had accompanied the previous king to conquer Mesopotamia and had been entrusted prior to the death of the king. We just read that. Okay. With the upbringing of Antiochus V, was returning to the capital with the other half of the Seleucid army. Lysias felt threatened. So when Lysias heard this, he's like, "Oh shoot, time out, hold up, what?" So Antiochus is dead, and he had set up Philip, and now Philip is coming back. That means that my ass is grass. So it says Lysias felt threatened and advised Antiochus V. Remember that he was his counselor. He was his the regent. All right. So it says he advised Antiochus V to offer peace to the Jews. The Jews accepted, however, in order to ensure they would not rise against them soon, the Syrian king and regent broke their promise and tore down the walls of Jerusalem before leaving. We read it. This is actually in the scriptures. All right, now let's look up. Let me see. It might be in this chapter. Let's see. Okay, let's look up Antiochus. Hopefully it comes up. Let's look it up in here then. All right, because there's what we just read about here in the secular history is actually in the scriptures. Okay, once again, linking the biblical history with secular history, showing you that this is all real, man. All right, it's not made up. Okay, okay, just give me 1 second while I pull up this precept. All right. So I think it might actually still be in this same chapter here. Yeah, we read this already. I know it's in this chapter. It got to be in here. Let's see. Here it is. I think it's Yep, here it is. This is First Maccabees chapter 6. All right, Salaki, I was looking for it. First Maccabees chapter 6, verse 55. Now remember, we just read when Lysias heard that Philip was coming back, he got shook. And he said, "Yo, he told the king, he said, yo, let's go be friends with the Jews so that this guy doesn't come and try to take over, basically, because he's been appointed by your father." So verse 55, it says, and this is First Maccabees 6 and 55. And at that time, Lysias heard say that Philip, whom Antiochus the king, now this was Epiphanes, the king, whilst he lived, had appointed to bring up his son Antiochus, that he might be king, was returned out of Persia and Media, and the king's host also that went with him, and that he sought to take unto him the ruling of the affairs. So Lysias was scared that he was going to lose the power. Verse 57, wherefore he went in all haste and said to the king and the captains of the host and company, we decay daily, and our victuals are but small, and the place we lay siege unto is strong, and the affairs of the kingdom lie upon us. Now therefore let us be friends with these men, and make peace with them and with their nation, and covenant with them, and they shall live after their laws as they did before, for they are therefore displeased and have done all these things because we abolished their laws. So he's saying, look, we besieging this nation. Philip is pulling up. We barely got food. Let's just be friends with them. Let's make a deal with them. All they want to do is keep their laws. Let's just let them do that. Verse 60, so the king and the princes were content. Wherefore he sent unto them to make peace, and they accepted thereof. And the king and the princes made an oath unto them, whereupon they went out of the stronghold. Then the king entered into Mount Zion. And see, so notice how they made peace because there was a siege. Now, when there's a siege, of course, the armies are on the outside, and those on the inside are like, look, we ain't coming out. The ones that the armies on the outside are like, okay, then we're gonna starve you out, and we're gonna see who can last the longest. Now, because they had to make this treaty in haste, they said, all right, let's make a peace treaty. And it says what? They made an oath unto them. So Lysias and Antiochus the fifth Eupator made an oath of peace to Jake. But guess what? When they made that oath, Jake was like, okay, let's end the siege, and they allowed them in. And this is what happened. Verse 62. Then the king entered into Mount Zion, and when he saw the strength of the place, he broke his oath that he had made, and gave commandment to pull down the wall round about. Afterward departed he in haste, and returned unto Antiochia, where he found Philip to be master of the city. So he fought against him and took the city by force. So going to show you why you can't trust your enemy, man. All right. Though he comes and says all these smooth words, man, at the end of the day, war is in his heart. Because when he came up in there, he said, oh, this is what y'all working with? No, 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 no. Tear that shit down. Tear it down, tear it down, tear it down. So that means that his oath didn't mean anything. All right. He could care less about that oath, man. Okay. But all in all, we're gonna end it off here, okay, at Antiochus Eupator. Okay, and if the spirit permits, and I continue with, we're gonna continue with Demetrius Soter. All right, and this is where it's gonna go into the other names, and the history of the Maccabees has a lot of names, a lot of dates, a lot of people, and it can get very confusing. Okay, so it's good to read. Look, if you come across a name in the scriptures that you don't recognize, look him up. Okay, look him up. Now, Antiochus, how do you know which Antiochus is talking about? Well, look up other names. If you look up Lysias, it'll link him up with Antiochus. It'll mention which Antiochus it was talking about. Okay, so you can do these things, read the secular history about them, and you'll get a clearer understanding as to, okay, oh, that's who this person was. Oh, that's how they're related to this person. Oh, that's why such and such is happening. Okay, and that's why the scripture says, as a matter of fact, let me get that. Okay, see, people think that to understand the scriptures is just, oh, I picked up the Bible, I went to a theological school, theological seminary, and I got a degree in it, so I'm good. No. Okay, I think it's 2 Timothy 2:15. All right, the scriptures say what? Study to show thyself approved unto the Most High, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. So you gotta study. You gotta study geography. You gotta study history. You gotta study language. Okay, you gotta study all these things to get the proper understanding of the scriptures, because the Bible is a complex book. It's not just a book. That's why a lot of people don't understand it. Okay, and the heaviest thing they don't understand is prophecy. Okay, now before I end it, all right, the brother had asked a question. Tyrese Witt, Shalom, brother. My history is a little iffy. Let me just pull it up. All right, so he says, Shalom, brother. My history is a little iffy when it comes to the time of Rome and the kings and the Maccabees. But how did Rome end up falling, seeing how powerful they were? Well, ultimately, Rome, which we all know ultimately the Most High set it up to for them to go down, but Rome had ended up stretching their armies way too far. Okay, Rome grew bigger and bigger and bigger, but they became too big. Okay, now when you look it up, I believe they call it the crisis of the third century or so. Okay, where basically you had civil wars, you had barbarians from the west, okay, invading in. All right, you had famines, you had different calamities that were hitting Rome at the same time. They were going through an economic crisis. All right, and all these different things were hitting at the same time, which in turn caused a split, a division in Rome. All right, where you had the Eastern Empire, you had the West, and instead of having one emperor over the whole of Rome, all right, it became different emperors here. All right, you had one on the east, one on the west, so on and so forth, and eventually it dissolved. And what was left of it was the Byzantine Empire, okay, which was ruled by Jake, okay, like Constantine, for example. Constantine had actually made the capital Byzantium, which is over there in I believe it's Istanbul, Turkey. Okay, but ultimately that's what happened because the Roman Empire, all right, starting with Julius Caesar. When you read in Second Esdras, the 11th chapter, and that's a man that chapter is a heavy meat filled chapter. All right, if you don't, if man, yeah, let's just put it like that. But when you read in Second Esdras, the 11th chapter, it talks about the eagle that had talents and it had the feathers and the heads and all that. That's talking about the Roman Empire. Okay, and now you had Julius Caesar, you had Augustus Caesar, you had Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, Nero, Galba, also Vitellius, and then Vespasian. Okay, so you had the damn, what was it called? I forgot the name of it, but it was a Claudio, the Julio Claudio empire. All right, and then you had the Flavian dynasty. Okay, which I believe the word Flavian means blonde hair. Okay, but you had the Flavian dynasty, which was Vespasian and his two sons, Titus and Domitian. And after that, that was it. The 12 feathers, that was it for them. Okay, then you had Jake come up in there. You had Nerva, all right, the Nerva Antonine dynasty. You had Nerva and all these different people, which were Jake. All right. Then later on, you had the Septimius Severus and the Marcus Aurelius and so on and so forth. But if you're talking about Edomite Rome really went down, all right, or went out of power with Domitian. Okay, but the Roman Empire, because of course Jake creeped up in there and Jake started ruling, all right, and they still had the structure, all right, of the Roman Empire, but over time it started to break apart because the Lord was transitioning the history, all right, or transitioning it into prophecy. Okay, now nah, Titus wasn't a Jake. Titus was the son of Vespasian, and Vespasian, hell yeah, he was an Edomite. Titus wasn't a Jake. He was a Edomite. And he was actually the one that led the siege, all right, of Jerusalem in 66 to 70 AD, and they committed a hell of atrocities there. Now I believe it was Trajan, all right. Let me see if I can pull it up. I believe it was the Emperor Trajan. Let's see. Let's look up. Let's do a little quick side research. And a lot of this too. See, they won't teach you this in your history classes because when you actually look up the true icons, you'll find out that hold up, these people were Jake, Constantine, and all of them. Okay, crisis of the third century. All right. Okay, so it says crisis of the third century, also known as military anarchy or the imperial crisis. Now, understand that Rome went through different phases because Rome wasn't always, when we think of Rome, we think of, oh, Julius Caesar and Nero and all of them. That was the Roman Empire. But Rome wasn't always an empire. All right. Rome started off as a kingdom, then it became a republic, and then it became an empire. Okay. So this says here the crisis of the third century, also known as military anarchy or the imperial crisis, 235 to 284 AD. Now I believe Domitian was around 90, 93, 91 AD. All right. Well, I already got the internet right here. Let me just look it up. All right. It's like you're giving me okay, cool. Let's look at Domitian. Okay. So Domitian, let's see, when did he rule? His reign was from 81, all right, September 14th, 81 AD to, that's right, September 18th, 96 AD. And then you had Nerva come up in there. So 96 AD, from that time period all the way, it says, to about 235 AD, that was really when this crisis hit Rome. Okay, and let's read about what it did. It says it was a period in which the Roman Empire nearly collapsed under the combined pressure of barbarian invasions and migrations into Roman territory, civil wars, peasant rebellions, political instability, with multiple usurpers competing for power, Roman reliance on and growing influence of barbarian mercenaries known as foederati, and commanders nominally working for Rome but increasingly independent. They had plagues, all right, debasement of currency, and economic depression. So this was all hitting Rome at once. Okay, it says the crisis began with the assassination of Emperor Severus Alexander by his own troops in 235. This initiated a 50-year period during which there were at least 26 claimants to the title of emperor, mostly prominent Roman army generals who assumed imperial power over all or part of the empire. The same number of men became accepted by the Roman Senate as emperor during the period, and so became legitimate emperors. Okay, so basically showing you that this is what was going on. Oh, Salaki, I said Trajan. It says Diocletian. There it is. That's the guy, Diocletian. It says the crisis ended with the ascension of Diocletian and his implementation of reforms in 284. All right, and it basically tells you he put in certain policies into place, which basically got Rome back on track. All right, but yeah, that was pretty much it. Basically answering the brother's question that he had asked earlier. It says, Khan, so he was a devil then, because I heard Apostle Ram say he was Jake once. Oh well, when you look it up, because if Vespasian was a let me put it like this: more than likely, you probably misheard him, or probably he meant something else. Because I'm pretty sure, because Vespasian was an Edomite, and Titus was the son of Vespasian. So there's no way that Titus could have been a Jake. You know, he had to have been an Edomite. You know, so more than likely, what I will say is, because I'm pretty sure he either, the apostle might have misspoke, or he meant something else, or you probably just heard it a different way. Okay, because the apostles have done shows on it. You know, they've when you go into when you look it up, there's videos of Apostle Tahar, Apostle Ramlab, and Apostle Gabar, where they actually did a series on Rome, and they go into Vespasian and Titus and stuff, and they tell you the Edomites. You know, so more than likely that's probably what happened. All right, but yeah, that's pretty much it. All right, on this lesson, Lord willing, it was edifying unto the elect. I know it's dealing with history. It just keeps going. It's vast. Okay, so it's just we get what we need, whatever's linked with the scriptures, and then the rest. If you try to learn the whole history in the world, man, you're gonna lose it. Okay, but it is good to know the history, man, because in order to know the mystery, you got to understand the history. All right, and that's not my quote. I borrowed it. All right, but yeah, it just gives you a clearer understanding, all right, of the scriptures. Okay, so with that, I hope you were edified. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rakha Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.